People sometimes think that Plaid Cymru can be inward-looking, so I'd like to start by taking you away from the theatre, away from Llanelli, away from Wales. Instead, we're on our way to Mongolia. I'm welcoming you to Ordos, a city built on coal, like a lot of our towns and valleys in Wales. Here in Ordos, you'll find office towers, you'll find administrative centres, there are government buildings, there are monuments, theatres and sports fields. There's miles and miles of suburbs, bang up-to-date duplexes, and bungalows with all the mod cons. Most of them have been sold, snapped up by a growing Chinese middle class. 1 million people were supposed to move to Ordos by 2010. The only thing is, none of them ever came. Until last year, until a travel writer managed to make it to Ordos. The Chinese government had done a great job to keep it quiet. Now we know it is just one of many ghost cities scattered across China, their shopping malls deserted and their wide expressways eerily quiet. The only noise you'd heard in Ordos come from the construction sites, which continue to build, even though there is no one to move in there afterwards. They continue to build, even though there is no money to pay for it. No real money anyway. Think back to the credit crunch and all the empty Spanish retirement complexes. Well, this is the same thing, only on an epic scale. The reference here is deliberate. The hedge fund manager, Kyle Bass, was one of the few to call that crisis at the time. Now he's saying the same thing about China, only he's saying it's going to be 5 times worse. In spite of the regime's best efforts to put a gloss on events, the trickle of facts that began with the discovery of Ordos has turned into a tsunami of doomed prediction. The Financial Times called China overborrowed and overbuilt. Chinese local authority debt now stands at over £2 trillion. That's a third as much again as what the UK government owes. And that's just the councils. China is shortly making 1.8 million steelworkers and coal miners redundant. Add to the mix China's shadow banking system, in which no one knows what's going on, and sensitive financial data missing from China's figures for many leaving the country, and it's becoming hard to find anyone who disagrees with Mr. Bass. Save one person, the Chancellor, George Osborne. Not only is he blithely ignoring the system flashing red, he insists all is well and is set to hand over huge amounts of public money to China for the highly sensitive new nuclear power station programme. His government's been trying to have it both ways with the steel industry, which brings us all the way back from China via Westminster to here in Llanelli and to Port Talbot in my part of the world. His government's been trying to have it both ways by stalling on higher tariffs against dumped Chinese steels in Europe. Had it not been for the grilling the ineffectual business secretary, Saeed Javid, got a couple of weeks ago from his fellow MPs, none of us would have known this was the case. Tory ministers were happy to create the impression that they were fighting Steel's corner. Mr. Javid rather limply told MPs that dragging their heels onto tariffs of up to 50% to replace current poultry levels of around 9% was happening because they wanted other UK businesses to benefit from lower prices. His comments betray an economic illiteracy of the worst and most unforgivable kind. But then economic illiteracy is something practiced by this government on a daily basis. How else do you explain why a neoliberal administration would sacrifice our privatised steel sector in favour of a nationalised industry overseas? Yes, backing nationalised industry over private business. They're not even practising the ideology they preach. The capitalism they shove down the throats of the most deprived in our society every single day, that tells severely disabled people that they must work, that makes vulnerable people pay the pernicious bedroom tax, targeting the people they should be helping, not punishing. So why are they happy to continue to court a country teetering on the edge, at the expense of our steel industry, a foundation industry. Because if that industry goes, what will be left for manufacturing? Some say it's down to the City of London's efforts to have the Chinese currency's first offshore trading centre. But I think there's another reason for all of this. It was over a year ago that the media started reporting that UK banks are most exposed to the Chinese economy. As of last August, British banks held a record total of $221.2 billion in outstanding loans to China, more than twice the rate of US banks. I find this staggering. Not 10 years after they almost crashed the world economy, British banks are back doing what got us in this mess in the first place, lending money that they're not sure they'll ever get back. Why are they still doing this? Has this or the previous Labour government ever jailed anyone as a result of the latest crash, as they did in Iceland? No. Instead, the Chancellor warns the rest of us to expect deeper and longer cuts, while all the time he's giving irresponsible banks another chance, a chance none of us in this room would ever get. And what makes me furious as a barista's cafe customer in Talbot at the moment, threatening to close our local cafe, is that it is Welsh steelworkers and their families that will pay the price for this. Plaid Cymru has worked hard to find lasting solutions for a viable Welsh steel industry. I went out with Jill Evans, MEP, and Adam Price last week to meet the European Commission in Brussels to find out what is being done there. This is what we do in Plaid. We try and be proactive. We fight for the nation that we live in, which, of course, I think is quite different to what the Welsh Government are doing at the moment. Because in 5 years, they have only corresponded once, just once, with Brussels over the steel industry. And let me say this for the record. The Welsh Government said my claim was untrue, yet the evidence came from them, their own records. If they do not stand by this information, I challenge them to show me the reason why not. We understood early on that from Port Talbot and Troster to survive and prosper, along with other steel sites in Newport in Wales, it needed action from the Welsh Government, from the UK Government, and from the European Parliament. It's at a European level that effective steps, from my understanding last week, are at least being prepared, even if Member States are scuppering this good work. The Commission has proposed reforming the tariffs, raising levels to as high as 50%. The European Parliament voted for it. Southern Member States voted for it. The Northern Member States, with the UK Government as ringleader, did not. So the proposal remains in limbo. These are people's livelihoods at stake here. This is the reality of the situation. Can we really rely on a Tory government to do its part? Empty words and grandstanding won't save our steel industry. And what of the Welsh Government? Well, we have heard a lot of noise. The Minister for the Economy set up a task force, another task force I should add, but only after Tata announced over 1,000 jobs losses in Wales. Is this really enough? Because ministers often seem resigned to the fact that job losses are going to happen. Well, I, for one, can't accept that. I know a Plaid minister would go through the job list row by row, grilling Tata managers, challenging them to justify every single redundancy. I know I would. We fight tooth and nail for them, and we are fighting tooth and nail. The Welsh Government say they are offering support for those losing their jobs, but staff don't even know yet who's going. And some recruitment agencies I've talked to in the area can't even get a foot in the door to give people the prospect of new opportunities in the area. This lack of ambition, which has characterised Carwyn Jones's lazy style of government, includes a total absence of initiative. What became clear to us in our discussions with Commission officials is that there are many funds that the Welsh Government could help Tata to access. The Commission prizes environmental initiatives, and Tata has planning permission to build a new power station that would reuse the gases created in steelmaking to create electricity. Not only would this proposal reduce emissions, it would also slash Tarta's energy bills, making the site more viable. Plaid Cymru first floated this idea of a part nationalisation some time ago. It has been done elsewhere in Europe, in Italy for example. So why not do it here? At least why not explore this new idea? Tata themselves told me that supporting the power plant would be a way forward for potential investment. But this wasn't enough for our First Minister. He pooh-poohed the idea from the outset, probably because it wasn't his idea. And this persistence of ignoring good ideas from outside of government always happens, even if, just even if, it would help Welsh workers. It's times like this that Plaid Cymru must lead. We are not in it for the same reasons as Labour, to cling onto power at all costs. Wales needs our leadership now more than ever. We won't take voters for granted. We won't take their loyalty for granted. Personally, I speak to steelworkers every day. They hear what they're saying. They're finding a new voice with Plaid Cymru. They are seeing that we want our steel towns to survive and thrive. So I'm standing in Araith this year because fighting for, with, and in our communities is what I always do. They don't call me Bolshy Beth for nothing. What I've shown is that when we fight, we never give up. With the Vistian Pensioners Campaign, with Junction 41, with protecting workers' rights, with retaining small businesses in the area. We are always there. The people of Araith, South Wales West, and all of Wales know that we will fight for them. We'll work with them, and we'll empower them to believe in themselves again, to realise that no, not all politicians are the same. Many of us have the drive, the passion, the hwyl to change this small, thriving nation of ours. Diolch yn fawr.